Hi everyone, so we are back with another video. So last time we had a chat about what is a thought.
Yeah.
And then I think at the end of the video we were discussing about how we can create that separation.
Yeah.
And how we see a thought as it is and how we can separate ourselves from that thought.
Yeah.
I think in this video we're gonna focus on that area, and we're gonna maybe talk little deep about in that area. So we started from what is a thought, and today we're gonna discuss about how we can investigate a thought.
Yeah, sweet. So like Timo said, I think the whole discussion in last video was about identifying a thought as a thought.
Yeah.
So because we usually run in this constant autoplay mode. It's like a broken radio, right? If you close your eyes and listen to your mind, the chatter, it's like a broken radio. It runs from this channel and jumps into another channel, another one like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay on the same channel, it just keeps running. And it goes in autoplay mode.
Yeah.
So, and we constantly go through these mood changes or emotional changes when our thoughts change. You don't have to have an event for your emotions to change, right? You can simply think about something nice and feel good. You can think about an event that was sad and you can feel sad here right now.
Yeah.
So your thoughts have that power, right? So you're constantly going through these emotional roller coasters without even knowing, right? Because we don't see our thoughts as thoughts. Instead, we are engaged inside the thoughts and running through the thoughts.
I think that's a very interesting way to see that.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll give you an example so we can enter into the discussion. So let's say I get angry or I get jealous or I feel sad. Those are the emotions that we feel. But so in that case, I have the option to actually take a step back and investigate, okay, what's going on? Why do I feel the way I feel? And also the interesting part is sometimes when we get into that, when we are in that moment, in that emotion, we don't want to come out of that. We just want to spend our time there and just be angry, just be, that enjoying that kind of thing. So let's start with why do we need to investigate?
Okay. So I just saw a nice visual.
Okay.
I think this will be really nice example to explain the whole thing. Say you're in the traffic, you're driving a car, right? And then you met with an accident. So there's another person involved, so your car is crashed. Now you are a victim in this case because your car is broken, crashed, and you're facing this situation that you don't really want to deal with.
Okay.
So you have the whole emotional roller coaster there because now you're upset, you're sad, you're angry because you might be going somewhere and then now you're delayed.
Yeah.
So you have this whole thing, right? So when an event happened like that, you have this whole emotional surge. Now, first things first, you are that person who's dealing with the situation, so your emotions are real. So you need to be patient with yourselves and let yourself feel these emotions. You have to deal with your emotions first, right?
Okay.
That's one way. So first step, right? Understanding you're going through the situation and looking at it that way. And investigation process comes next as a second step, right?
Okay.
You can't start investigating right away, especially if you're not practiced having awareness around this, creating separation around your thoughts and yourself. You can't really do this at real time.
Yeah, I mean,
after a lot of practice you can, but at the beginning you can't.
You can't even think about it.
Yeah. So first you're dealing with your emotions. That's the first step. But after that, there comes a time, maybe after a week or two after the accident, you can or you have the peace of mind to reflect on the event, right? When you're doing that, you can be an observer who observed that accident happening from a nearby balcony.
Interesting. Okay.
Like that person saw the whole thing, but that person did not have any engagement in the accident. So that person simply had the observation. Right. So when you are investigating what happened, especially your thoughts, this is the approach you need to have. Perspective. I'm simply the person who's in the balcony, who's observing that happened. I don't have any part that I play inside that event. When you have this perspective, now you can start investigating, asking questions. It's like a judge in the court. Judge does not take a side, right?
Yeah.
Judge takes everything into consideration, but judge is very unbiased. Judge can process things rationally. Like that, we need to have that mindset of we're not like the way judge does, because judge's duty is to find who's right and who's wrong. But instead, what we're doing the same approach, but we're not judging who's right or who's wrong. We're simply finding out what happened.
So that's a very interesting point that you said. The word judgment, and then we were also talking about observing. So maybe let's talk about what is actually observing, and then what is a judgment.
So observation is simply an observing process, like watching a TV without any opinion. You simply see everything that happens, you understand everything, but you don't have any problem about anything.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you have an opinion about the same TV show you're watching, say you like it, you start enjoying it. But then because you have created this opinion about the whole show, you do have an added pressure. Sometimes you think, oh, if the other person is enjoying this or not, but you have this pressure to tell them that this is a good show, prove yourself. So you're using this show to show something about your identity. It's gone to a different place because the judgment is there. So the same way, if you don't like the movie or the show, you start, every time something that you don't really like happens, you start say, oh, this is shit, this is not good, and all that, and then you're going through a suffering trip. So it's 3 different ways to watch the same show, right? 2 people suffer, 1 person does not, because simply they have an observation, they don't have any judgment about the whole thing.
So it's like, let's say we are watching a movie or something, and if we are actually watching that or observing or in that moment, we are not in our mind thinking about, oh, like there's a problem there, like there's something happened there, like so at that moment, like once we started doing that, then it's pretty much saying that we are not observing it anymore.
Yes, you're not experiencing it anymore. So what you're doing is you've taken a screenshot of that thing, and you've gone inside your mind, and now you're analyzing that screenshot.
Interesting.
So you're no longer engaged in the experience.
That's interesting. So it's like there's another example that comes to my mind is the garden example.
Yeah.
So when we, like, if we're seeing a garden for the first time, like when we see the garden, oh, that's a beautiful garden, but we would be like, oh, there's a missing, or like there's a dead plant, or we could do this, like, oh, it would be nice if we do that. So we immediately maybe like judging, and we are not really actually enjoying what we have in front of our eyes.
So this is mainly to do with how we have trained our minds. We have a very a fault-finding mind. Our mind is trained in a way, we are so quick to look at things that needs to be fixed. We are quickly looking at faults. Right?
Why do you think that happens?
It's the way we are trained to think since kids.
Okay.
Right? It's just a general programming that we inherit. So we are usually trained to look at things in this way, judge. That's why when you sit down in your garden, you see all the things that you need to be fixed. This plant needs watering, this grass needs to be cut. You see all that things you need to change, because your mind is always looking for things that seems to be fixed. Because that's the approach we have internally. Because we always look at ourselves as something or a person who needs to be fixed. Because we are not happy with ourselves for who we are. We cannot accept the person who's here right now. Because we've created this imaginary best version of ourselves who exists in the future, right? And it's an illusion. That person is an illusion, right? Because that person does not exist here. It's like that donkey. It's got this stick attached to the donkey, and end of the stick there's a carrot. So the donkey is trying to get the carrot. It's walking forward, but it's never getting the carrot. If the donkey wants to get the carrot, it's need to walk a bit faster and stop. Then momentum will bring the carrot to the donkey. So like that, we're chasing. We're constantly chasing after this best version of ourselves who exists in the future. But what we forget is that that imaginary character exists in the person who's here right now. Your best version exists in your mind who's here right now. But you're chasing that person, which means you're saying I'm not happy with the person who actually exists. So what happens is your mind constantly trying to figure out ways to fix this person to become the other person, imaginary character. But that character, because of our nature in our mind, we never get satisfied with anything. No matter how much you achieve in your life, the goal keeps going away from you. So because we have this process of thinking internally happening inside ourselves, it gets translated outside. We start seeing things as things that needs to be fixed. We cannot accept things for what they are. So the approach needs to be changed. So this is this story Ajahn Brahm says, try to be a visitor in your home. Right? Because when you enter your home, every day you enter your home as a homeowner. Homeowner has a lot of responsibilities. For example, once you finish your work and you come home, if you see all the dishes in the sink, if you're the homeowner, you have to get rid of the dishes, dirty dishes, you need to do that. Stress. If you're a visitor, you don't worry about that. You don't worry about cleaning the house. So he says once in a while, try to enter your house as a visitor instead of the owner. So
that's interesting.
When you go to someone else's place as a visitor, you don't have problem about their dishes. You don't have problem about mopping their floor or whatever. You just simply enjoy the space and come. So if you have the same approach with your in your mind, you simply visit. So you don't look at your thoughts as thoughts that needs to be fixed. You simply accept them for what they are, and you get an observation.
So I have a question in there. So if you think that way, like how do we learn things and make our lives, let's say, better?
So growing is changing. Understand? Growing means you learn more things, or you develop, or something happens, which means you change from the previous version to a different version. So simply change you see as growth. Right? So that's what growth is. So, but the thing is, change, you don't have to force change. If there's anything that's permanent in this world, that is change. Change is something inevitable. So regardless whether you force yourself to change or not, you're going to change. That's given. Right. But we have a problem with that flow, because we are running on ideologies that society has created. So we are trying, that whole imaginary character is created on society's standards and rules and regulations and playbook.
That's true.
And that and the natural flow could be two different things. So the more you try to push yourself on that, you're going to suffer a lot. But what happens is, when you start accepting yourself and caring yourself for who you are, what you're doing is you're allowing yourself a lot of space, stress-free space, to grow and expand. And your expansion, your growth becomes natural.
So it's not resisting that change.
100% you're not resisting growth and your development. No. You're actually enhancing it. You're actually giving it more
like the natural flow.
energy.
We are welcoming it.
Welcoming it. The more you try to do the other thing, there's a lot of resistance, there's a lot of force that's involved, and it creates stress. You want to live your life full of stress, you can choose that. But you can do the same thing or better without having that external stress.
That's a very interesting point, Okay, so we circling back to the question, investigating a thought. So we actually talk about how we can find some tools in Buddhism where we can integrate those tools such as meditation. So I want to talk about what sort of options or tools we have for this kind of observation and investigation.
Yeah. So in Buddhism, they have pretty straightforward methods that you can actually follow or get inspiration from. When I say get inspiration from, what I'm saying is you can get the root understanding of the concept and adopt it that according to a way that suits your life.
Okay.
Understanding the basic principle. Because, for an example, like the monastic life of a Buddhist monk might not suit you, but you can still do the same practice while living your normal life.
Right.
You just have to adopt it that in a way that suits you without breaking the principles of it. So, in Buddhist meditation, there's two different kinds: the Samatha and Vipassana. Samatha is mindfulness meditation. So it's about awareness, bringing awareness and concentration and all that. So awareness simply means, say you are entering a dark room, you don't see anything. The moment you turn the light on, you see everything in the room, right?
Right. Yeah.
So in your mind, you run in that autoplay, auto chat, without any awareness. You don't even know what's going in that radio, broken radio, what channel is playing. You don't understand, or you're not aware. The moment you bring awareness into your thoughts, what happens is it's like you're switching the light on inside your mind, and then all of a sudden you can see all the thoughts that's running around, the hungry thoughts, the angry thoughts, and then some thoughts that doesn't want to really show up, hiding somewhere else. All these things you can start seeing clearly. That's awareness. That's mindfulness. So you need both, to be honest. When you're practicing, you need to create enough concentration, mindfulness, awareness, so that you can actually sustain the times that you look at your thoughts. So you can actually do the work inside the thoughts, right?
Yeah.
It's like learning how to look at a screen before start coding, right? So you need to practice looking at the screen first, right? And then comes the Vipassana. Vipassana is investigation. So investigation is simply investigating your mind to understand who you are.
Okay.
So what you're doing is you're basically asking questions and simply layer by layer unwrapping this whole building block of mind.
Interesting.
So that's what you're doing with investigation. So you see on the surface, first you see me as myself. That exists in your mind. Oh, there's me, who's my thoughts and all that. So you start asking surface questions. Okay, who's this me? Where this me comes from? Where this thought is coming? So you start backtracking everything, asking questions, right? You're not doing it to judge, to come to a conclusion. You're simply doing it to understand. So you have to be creative with your questioning, because the moment if your mind sees you're trying to judge, it gets scared.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And then
So
it
true.
starts deviating, you get stuck in the thought trail, it start looping. The way to break that loop is to bring awareness. The moment you're aware of something, you're no longer in that loop because you're disconnected.
I think that's a very good point, because when I'm doing that, when I'm trying to investigate my thoughts, usually like at the beginning, when I'm thinking about, okay, I need to think what happened, but I usually have this resistance that my mind will be like, okay, so once you get in, you don't know where you're going to end up. So you don't know what you're going to find at the end of this line. So I have this thought in my mind, okay, once I observe, investigate this process, then you need to take an action. I think that's the scary part, because so do we actually need to have that kind of conclusion?
Okay, so yes, I understand why it's scary, right? Because we think we need to come up with a solution.
Yeah.
And we think we are not capable enough to come up with a solution. That's the whole trip that we go, when the fear comes from that. What we need to understand is that mindset comes from that initial thing I explained. We need the fault finding mind, because our mind automatically comes into this conclusion when I find out something there, when I explore something new, I need to fix it.
Interesting.
But
Right.
if your approach changes, I don't need to fix it. I need to simply know that it's there, to bring awareness into that, light into it, to see that it simply exists in the room. And then you simply say, okay, I see that you are in the room, and I'm okay with you being in the room. Simply accept it.
So it's just like accepting the thoughts that we have.
Yeah, accepting and allowing space and creating space for those thoughts to exist without getting rid of them.
So is that even for bad thoughts?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
Okay.
Those thoughts become bad because you tag them as bad thoughts. Otherwise, they're simply
Interesting.
thoughts.
Right.
There are no good thoughts and no bad thoughts when you're doing this investigation, because you're no longer a judge. You're simply an observer. You see everything as 1 zeros, binary. You don't see as good as that.
Interesting.
You have to make everything mechanical, desensitize yourself, because so you're dealing with simply information and you're completely disconnected from it. So you're simply doing the process of analyzing and questioning and understanding. And
So
when you get answers in that, answers in that way, like this is the answer to your question previously. You get answers. So, for an example, when you're simply dealing with your mind, you can ask your mind questions. Okay, why is it like this? And when you ask that question, the answer might not come up at the same time.
Right.
Right? What you do is you ask the question and you leave it there. You don't force your mind to come up with the question right at that moment.
Right.
What will happen is, over time, your mind will gather more information on it without you knowing, right? Because you open this thread in there. Now you ask a question. Now mind needs to find the answer, right? So it will gather information and run through it. And maybe after a week or two, you will randomly get an answer. Oh, this was the answer to this question. That comes up. When that comes up, you need to know that don't take it as a sure thing.
Okay.
Always says, okay, yes, it is an answer, but I'm not sure if it's the answer. So maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Let's leave it as an observation and you move on. Right? Because that could change again. So we don't come to conclusion in this whole process. Our job is not to come to conclusions, because the moment you come into a conclusion, there is a person who came into that conclusion. So now you've created another chance of getting yourself triggered, because there's an identity. The person who came into this conclusion. The identity is there. So the moment someone says something that goes against it, this person could get hurt if you created that attachment. That's why you don't come into conclusions. You simply ask questions, go deeper and go deeper and go deeper. So you make this constant practice.
So we talk about this tagging, yeah?
Yeah.
And let's say, like, we have this base software in our mind, and before we understand this process, it's just going to run as it is, like just the base software. Right? When we processing that thoughts, we're going to tag that as a good and bad. So that's how we initially started tagging those thoughts as good and bad.
Yeah. So
maybe
there's different layers to it. Yes, it is like that on one layer.
So it's like at the start.
At the start, yes.
It was all neutral. But then we slowly we investigated, and we made a judgment saying, this is good, this is bad.
That's the thing. That part, so we did not investigate. At the beginning, when the software was created, when we were young, we simply believed things for what other people said. We did not investigate. That's the problem.
Interesting.
So that's why we inherited a base software unconsciously, because we didn't have the power to investigate. Now is only when we can question this, because we have more awareness around it. And it's not our fault, because we could not have done it as kids.
True, yeah.
So that's what we inherit.
Okay, so we talk about Vipassana and Samatha. I want to also talk about more about judgment.
Yeah. So this one is a very fine place. This part we need to understand, because in this world, when we live, we need to know things.
Okay.
To live a practical life, right? It's good. It's handy. It's practical to know that fire burns you, so you know not to touch it.
Yeah.
It's useful. right? So if there is observation, it's a fact, right? You just know it, right? That's useful information you can use in the future.
Yeah.
Because if you ignore that and you keep putting yourself in fire, you just end up with a lot of wounds.
Yeah. True.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
So we need to be practical in that aspect. So we need to know things, understand it. It's good to know that this person behaves like this. So I know in my next interaction how to behave in a way that I don't get fucked up.
Yeah. True.
It's useful, right? But also I don't have a problem for that person being like that person. I don't want to fix that person. It's none of my business. So there's observation, but there's no judgment. If I say this person is like this, and I keep every time I see that person, all these sorts of this, that person keeps triggering my thoughts inside myself.
Yeah.
That means I'm getting triggered, which means there are judgments. This person have things that I don't agree with.
Yeah.
Right. That that person is triggering.
Yeah.
So when that happens, the first thing I do is before start practicing, what happened was when someone trigger me, I engage with them and then I give a reaction. That's the normal. We live in this compulsive reactive state. We are not aware of our actions. We simply react to things that happens in front of ourselves. So someone yells at you, you engage and you start yelling. But the moment you bring awareness into yourself, what happens is your actions start changing. So what happens is when someone yells at you, what I started doing was I simply say thank you to that person inside myself and simply walks away. I don't want no further contact with that person, because the moment I realized I got triggered, that person's job was done. I was like, oh, thank you for helping me to understand that there are still things that you can trigger inside me. So your job is done for showing me the trigger points. Now it's my job. Then I go and I was like, okay, this idiot did something like this. Why the fuck did I get triggered? Then I ask myself, so I can understand. And usually it get tracked to a place where, okay, that person did something I did not agree with. So something I did not agree with means there are things that I created inside my mind that I already agree with. Then what I do is, I was like, okay, what is this thing that I agree with? Right? And then I ask, okay, this is the thing that I'm agreeing with. Okay, apple meant to be like this. An example.
Yeah.
How did I come to conclusion that apple should be like this? And then you go there, when I was saying this person said this.
Yeah.
So it had no basis simply because a long time ago you heard something. You borrowed that judgment from someone else. And now you had created this whole attachment toward it. Now it's acting up and now you're suffering because someone else did not, or had a different way about that apple.
Yeah.
So that's how you track. When you track, you always find that you got triggered because there was a judgment that happened about some particular thing inside yourself. So you find that judgment, you find mental clarity, enough clarity around that whole judgment thing.
Yeah.
Maybe what you had was true, the opinion you had. So simply when that happens, what you're doing is, okay, so where I stood was right.
Yeah.
I don't have any doubt about it. Next time when I'm engaging in the same action, I don't feel guilty anymore because I know for myself that this has a foundation and basis.
So you went to the source and you verified.
Root cause and verified it. And if there was an unnecessary judgment, I simply unjudged it.
Yeah.
And I got rid of it. Right? So
it's like cleaning the
whole
thoughts.
System. Yeah. So what happens is when you start observing your thoughts, you start going into all these root causes. And end of all the root causes, what you find is judgments. Judgments create limitations. You get all these limitations as a human being because you have judgments inside you that got planted. So you dive deep into all these places. It's like a flowchart. Division into these branches, and every single branch get divided through a judgment, good and bad. So you go through everything. Whatever you took as good, you undo it, you bring into zero. Whatever you took as negative, you bring into zero, not good, not bad. So then you have this whole flow chart with without any obstruction or any judgment. It's a clean flow of observation. That's how you clean your software.
Interesting.
That's how you debug it. The bugs are the judgments. When you get rid of all the bugs, the judgments, it becomes a wonderful,
very smooth flow.
Smooth flow. That's another way to look at Vipassana meditation. That's basically what the concept is. So you don't have to go to a monastery and become a monk to do it. You can simply, because the thing is, right, no matter what you do in your day, when you wake up until you go to sleep, you think. You think about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When you eat, when you watch TV, when you're with your girlfriend, when you are doing your work, whatever you do, you are thinking. You non-stop think, right? So what we are going to do is that same thinking. So what we are not going to change anything that we in our daily life. We're simply going to turn inward and change that thinking into this process. So it's not going to take up your time. You will be doing everything, but simultaneously you will be practicing inside your mind.
That's a very interesting
You can do it.
concept. Yeah, I feel like maybe this is the place we can stop for this one.
Yeah.
But before that, I just want to thank you for all the people who watched our previous video. Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate that. We got a really good feedback, so I think most of these questions came from those feedbacks, and I think we kind of fixed the light as well. So
lighting is.
So I think this is a good place to stop, and maybe
Thanks
we can.
for watching, and so we're going to keep discussing about these kind of topics. Maybe if there's anything you want us to discuss about, we can. Just let us know.
All right, sounds good. Okay.
Thank you. See ya.